Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Arrow. So a really good episode where we get to see Oliver trying to build a team with Wild Dog, Curtis, as well as the new Canary. And I really like his training tactics because obviously we see the parallels between what he's teaching them and what was kind of taught to him. It was basically part of his Bratva training that basically have to stay on the line, get up, and try and get to the bell, and that's kind of how you kind of win that part of it. And so basically for him, it was pretty obvious to me. I was like, okay, it's pretty obvious that basically when it's all said and done, it's obviously a teamwork exercise, because even then you can notice it's like they were always going after Oliver one at a time rather than kind of working together. But I was actually surprised when you actually see his Bratva training, and it was just like, I was like, okay, yeah, I see it. Everyone worked together, and then shot all the other three guys, because it's like Oliver was the only one that rang the bell, and the others were kind of like, it was kind of the lesson he learned in the Bratva is to only trust in yourself. He came up with the whole idea of teamwork and everything, but he learned a hard lesson that you need to trust. The only person you can rely on is yourself. And the reason why he survived was because he was the one smart enough to think about working together. The others didn't. So smart is something the Bratva can need. So basically it was kind of a situation of like, yes, you came up with the idea of teamwork, but you had to be willing to use people. And it was kind of a hard lesson that Oliver had to learn. But I mean, what I find interesting though is he was not trying to pass on that part of the lesson. The main lesson was the fact is that, hey, we need to work together, but it didn't necessarily come off that way, because for Oliver, he was so busy kind of digging everyone down. It kind of even broke my heart when Curtis kind of told him off. It's like, the fact of the matter is no one trusts you because you don't trust us, you don't even really want us, which is the truth. I mean, he's forming his team out of reluctance because he doesn't, he didn't want to replace his team. I even like that conversation he had with Thea earlier. She's like, oh, it's a good idea, good thing you're having a team. He's like, you're not worried about being, sad about being replaced or whatever. She's like, oh, it's cute how you think I could actually be replaced. But, yeah. But, Curtis, like, getting back to it, Curtis said that heartbreaking thing. It's like, you only know how to tear people down, you don't know how to really build them up, and it's something Oliver has struggled with, all this time that we've kind of known him across the series. It's like he's not the same person he was when he before he went to that island, but at the same time it's just like, because of everything he went through, he became a little detached and cold-hearted. I mean, it was an interesting thing because it's like finding out, okay, it's like part of you, like, it's kind of always been the reason why Oliver has been very reserved when it comes to these things, why he doesn't really open up to people and everything. It's kind of at least he was open enough to admit why he was, the way he cut himself off the team, why he wasn't trying to get too involved with them, didn't even want to tell them who he really was. I mean, because remember, he even wanted Felicity to wear a mask, which she was like, no, I'm not about to do that. Rather than admitting his true identity at first, he hid it, just stayed as the Green Arrow, because, he told Felicity that he learned a lesson at the Bratva. And that means with the Bratva, you don't actually get to know each other. Everyone uses fake names because the whole point is to cut all ties. You're not supposed to have any connection to anyone, because connections will basically make you weak and put you at a disadvantage. So as long as there's no strings attached connecting you to anyone, then it's like you can do your job more effectively. And that's what he kind of thought he was doing, here, because it's like his years of training, everything that happened to him in those 5 years put him where he is now, where he's able to protect the city. But Laurel didn't go through those same training. It's tying back into it. That's a big reason why he does the things he does, is because it's like he lost someone that was very important to him. And, it's like Laurel wasn't well trained. And so I'm not about to make that mistake with these three, because it's protecting himself, because the fact is, the moment he actually let people in, they all disappeared. Yes, there's different circumstances around everyone leaving. Everyone had to leave for their own reasons. But the fact of the matter is, for Oliver, it almost felt like being abandoned by the people he felt closest to. And that was kind of something Curtis had brought up earlier that kind of dug into him a little. It's like the fact is that, because Curtis was like, I was trying to explain to the others that your team was like your family, that you had trust and everything. But it was like, no, they didn't trust you, because if they really trusted you, they'd be here right now. They all left you. So that's a key sign that something's wrong here. So, I mean, like I said, it was kind of a reality check that Oliver needed. It kind of, Felicity kind of said it best, where she was basically like, the team followed him. They don't need the Green Arrow necessarily as a leader doing the tactics he's doing. They need Oliver Queen, because they followed him because they believed in him. Like, what he was doing this for, he kind of gave them courage, essentially motivated them to do their best to protect the city. So he ended up finally revealing himself to them. So we also had Lance's story in this episode, where we still, like, I was curious what they were going to do. Like, I was like, okay, I thought, like, when it was all said and done, he was going to be okay, but it's like, it's not that easy to bounce back from, because basically he doesn't have something there to kind of, he's not on steady ground. Life is just kind of very shaky right now. It has been ever since Laurel died, but even more so because, he's kind of alone now, and just all that grief was kind of held back because he had someone there to kind of, in his words, have a reason not to drink anymore. But now it's just like he's lost everything. I mean, yes, Sarah's still alive and everything, but she's off time traveling and everything. She's not there to kind of act as his rock. And sadly, it's kind of a good thing that she's not, because it's something that Lance is going to have to do on his own. Because if Sarah's there, that's just going to motivate him to kind of lean on her, kind of crutch on her. He needs to kind of be able to stand up on his own, kind of, confront what happened. It's like he buried his feelings about everything that happened. I mean, he was sad at the time, obviously, but it just, like, he didn't really truly confront things. So I'm guessing now is going to be the opportunity to, especially because, he realized in this episode, it's like his drinking allowed the whole situation to go down. And because he was just drunk and just kind of, it's the only way kind of dealing with his pain. Because you knew something was a little off, because he was acting a little off the walls, a little peppy, and just kind of like trying to be like, hey, don't worry, I got this. I'm a little jittery and stuff like that. So I'm like, is it drinking, or are you on pills or something? But I'm very interested to see what they're going to do with him, especially because Thea is kind of asking him to be the deputy mayor. That's going to be really interesting, because it's like him and Oliver haven't always seen eye to eye. But I mean, over the more recent season, they kind of became closer and closer. And what I really think is going to be very fascinating to see is how will that dynamic continue to evolve, or will it completely change, like, between them? Because it's like he's going to have because I already like the relationship between Oliver and Thea now, because it's like I've always loved the relationship, but it's evolved into something else, because she's actually like his advisor. She helps him with a lot of stuff. She kind of covers for him on a lot of occasions. I mean, that's one reason why he's putting together this team, because it's like this team will give him more time to be. It means less time as a Green Arrow and more time as Oliver Queen to kind of help the city and whatnot. So, but it's just going to be interesting to see what they decide to do with Lance. Him being in a position like deputy mayor. I just think it's fascinating. I really love the fact is that Oliver is mayor, and it kind of comes back to a conversation that Oliver had in earlier seasons, like kind of like, is the vigilante the real him? Because I mean, that it technically is the real him because of what happened to him on that island. And does that mean Oliver Queen is disguised? It's kind of like, bringing parallels to Supergirl. It's a very similar situation, or just like identity. Like, I don't know. It seems like the only one that doesn't really struggle with, I mean, I think Barry does to an extent, but I don't think it's to necessarily the extent that either one of them does. I mean, because, in Oliver's case, his case is a little different than Supergirl's, but I mean, it's similar, different circumstances, but the outcome is kind of the same, and just like they don't really know who they are. They're trying to balance two identities, which, like I said, Barry does too, but it's like, I don't know. I've never really seen it become too much of an issue. Yes, granted, current storyline is, whole Flashpoint thing is like, oh, he didn't need to be the Flash anymore, gave him more time to spend with his family and stuff, but still, it just kind of, I feel like it's there in pieces, but I feel like, no, because it's definitely interfered with his life, but I feel like he's still trying to work out the kinks of it, but I feel like it's not as big as it is with Oliver and Kara, but it's still a deal. I know I'm kind of going off the reservation, and I should kind of bring it back to Arrow, obviously. So, but for him, I think a big part of this season is going to be kind of rectifying, like, last season he kind of stepped up as the Green Arrow, and now, it's like the hero that fights in the shadows, and now he's trying to, because the beginning of the season makes it seem like Oliver Queen was the disguise, because it's like, I'm only the mayor so it can help me better with my night job. But now it's kind of like, no, I need to find that balance. I need to work as the Green Arrow, but I need to work at being Oliver Queen just as hard. I was actually quite surprised in this episode when we saw that whole situation with Amertech is what the company he was working with, that basically helping with hospitals and stuff like that. They're a very powerful business. I was very surprised when finding out it's like, oh yeah, they're actually connect. Like, because I was wondering why they would work with church and whatnot, and why they were so willing to let Oliver make that deal where it's like, oh, if something happens that basically they'll be liable for it, and if anything happens they have to pay for it. Because one of their people got attacked, which, by the quote unquote villain of the episode, but I'll get to that in a second. But it turns out that they're connected to Genesis, because basically the missile that destroyed that town was created by a subsidiary company of Amertech. So basically, that's why they were so quick to jump on Oliver's, because they were filing bankruptcy and trying to, use Oliver as a means of kind of getting around that. They even joined up with Tobias Church to kind of also remedy that situation as well. But kind of, along that same lines, we got introduced to a new hero who I'm not familiar with. Currently, they're just calling him Ragman. I'm sure if Cisco was around, he'd give it a better name, but that's just kind of the name they're going with right now. And it turns out that, like, he's a survivor of that town. Like, literally everyone died, and he's kind of the only person that died. Surprisingly, because the whole thing is like, okay, is he a metahuman, or is it magic that protected him? And it seems like, yep, it's technically magic, because the cloth that he uses, basically his dad wrapped it around him and told him it was very special, and it protected him from the explosion. That's why he's basically the only one that survived. To me, I kind of chalked that up to kind of like a Blue Beetle situation. To anyone that's not familiar with Blue Beetle, it's just a beetle it's kind of a magic thing. My understanding of it is, I'm not that familiar with Blue Beetle, but it's like a Egyptian entity that, joins with a person. So I'm thinking it's kind of a similar situation like that. I think Blue Beetle is considered magic. I don't think it's like science fictional. I think it is kind of like a supernatural magic feel to it. So, because that was kind of something that they were bringing up, that, like, at the very least they were saying, like, oh, Oliver's not going to confront a magic user this season. So, but I guess in my mind I kind of chalked that up as like, oh, I guess we're not going to get any magic at all. But it's like, no, we're getting magic. To a certain extent, but like, literally in the back of my mind, I keep wondering, are we going to get Zatanna or not? Just because last season, the person that was going to teach Oliver how to fight the light, I assume, I was like the only, like, magic person in DC I'm really familiar with is Zatanna. Shazam too, but even I'm not that familiar with. I know a little bit here and there, but I'm not that familiar with him. But I'm pretty sure his powers come from magic as well. But I don't know if that's something we're going to see in these shows. But definitely like someone like Zatanna or something. But I think that's also because of my brain, because it's like, well, Zatanna made an appearance on Smallville, so I think that's why I kind of jumped to that. So I'm very curious to see will magic be happening at all in this season. And also, that whole situation brings up a very interesting thing. Because a lot of people, I've heard people complain about how, like, oh, Felicity, there's not that big of a deal about what went down. The fact is, Felicity ended up destroying a town. She's trying to avert the missile, and there was not enough time, and it had to land somewhere, and it landed there, and a lot of people died. And it seems like one of those situations where it's never bothered her. And I feel like some people might chalk it up to that, but in this episode, hearing that conversation from Ragman, you kind of see her tearing up a little bit. Oliver even asked her if she's okay, but it's one of those situations I think Oliver's a little blind and doesn't see things for what they are, but we kind of see it. And I'm very interested to see what that means. Especially because Ragman is willing to work with the team now, what that means for Felicity. It's like working with the guy, like, because he blames Amertech. It's like, yeah, he blames them, he blames Dark, Hive. Well, don't really know about Hive's connection and whatnot. Which I'm curious. Like that was kind of a thing too. It literally clicked in my mind. I almost completely forgotten because a lot of people were. I've heard speculation because like season 4, Dark was the main antagonist, but they were setting up Hive, so maybe Hive will be our main antagonist this season. Maybe they're the ones that's connected to that guy named Prometheus who ended up attacking Tobias at the end of the episode. He's like, you could have killed the Green Arrow. The only one that's going to kill him is me. If you go near it, like kind of go after him again, I will kill you. So I'm curious what that's about. Is it one of those situations kind of like Oliver's past coming back to haunt him? Like I said, to me, like I think that's what a lot of people liked the most about season 2 was the whole Slade situation because it was kind of like they like the personal stories. So if this is something from Oliver's past that's coming back to haunt him in like in a more personal way, then maybe that's going to drive this situation. Like maybe that'll kind of because I don't really know how most people feel about this season. So far, I'm really liking it. I've never had a problem with the past season. People have the problem with season 3, season 4. I'm pretty sure I brought this up last time, but I didn't have a problem with it. But that's just me about it. Nevertheless, I'm very curious to quickly find out what his story is. But the thing is, Ragman, the point I was trying to get to earlier, Ragman doesn't know about Felicity's involvement. Only person that knows is basically, I'm sure Curtis, Oliver, and Felicity herself are kind of the only ones that really know. I mean, Thea and everyone too, but still, like, I mean, I'm wondering, him being a part of the team, does that mean, how will that situation go? Will Felicity tell him the truth? Because if she tells him the truth, who knows how he'll react? I mean, Oliver kind of talked him out of kind of not going the vengeance route because he's like, your father wouldn't want you to do this. He'd want you to be better than him. And he's like, how do you know? He's like, Oliver brings up the fact is, I promised my dad, my dad saved my life too, just like your dad saved yours. And he wanted me to be a better person to him. But he's like, in the time I've been back, I have not done that. I have not been the better person that he wanted me to be. Well, I mean, he said in the 10 years, but I was like, I had to think about it for a second. I was like, yeah, like I was thinking he was only talking about the fact of how much time he had been back. So I was thinking like, no, it should be 5 years. But it's like, no, I guess for Oliver, it counts, even from the moment his dad sacrificed himself 10 years ago. After that, everything he's done since then, I'm sure it's kind of like, I bet you it's one of those situations. I mean, who wouldn't want to do things differently? And I'm sure Oliver would want to. Just to kind of be the person that he should be, the person that his dad would be proud of, And maybe this is going to be another season of kind of Oliver kind of growing, It's just like, it always seems like Oliver is taking a step forward, but it always does seem like he is taking 2 steps back because it's like, because even Felicity said in this episode, she's like, you don't really bring up your time in Russia. Like, it's kind of like, I mean, that's a question that, like, we don't necessarily always get answered. It's like, how much of Oliver's past has he actually told anyone about? I mean, usually the only time people find out about things, like for instance, last season, it's like, oh yeah, magic exists. Oliver's like, well, I had this experience on Leah and you, with magic. It's like, okay, so this entire time you've never told us that magic exists. It's like, well, it was in the past and just kind of like not the easiest thing to bring up or something, so I don't know. It does bring up that question, like, how much do people really know? And then finally in this episode, we also had the whole situation with, John. Now, John's in like situation because basically he's there trying to collect some parts that are connected to the Genesis project. Basically, some of the nukes that basically they were going to set off. But him and his team were sitting there to retrieve it. He brought like his side of the story brought up some very interesting things. He's talking about the fact, obviously, once I brought that up in something else too more recently. The fact is, fear keeps you strong, it keeps you alive, and that the fact is he has these stripes and he's like, these stripes like, tell him kind of like to do what he's got to do, whether it's right or wrong. And to me, like basically just follow your orders. Like I interpret it this way. Maybe I'm completely wrong to kind of interpret it, but it seemed like John was basically making it seem like follow your orders. Doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong necessarily, just follow orders and basically be a good soldier. The fact is you don't have to think about anything. All you have to do is follow orders. Now, I'm thinking for John, like, I mean, like I said, that's how I'm taking it. Maybe, you'll take it a different way. But to me, it's just kind of John's way of being like, I don't have to do anything anymore. Like, I just follow orders. I'll be the gun, and I'm just waiting for someone to point me in the right direction and hit my target. Essentially, like, he hasn't gone to, like, I don't mean that in kind of like a dead shot type of way, but I mean that in just a kind of like, he doesn't want to make any more decisions because, just the whole Andy situation just pushed him, and he just needed to get away from that, because being a part of Team Arrow meant making decisions that would affect a lot of people's lives, and I'm sure that's not the easiest thing. I mean, especially the whole Andy situation, just weighing heavily on his heart. That's a decision he made on his own. And so I guess it's easy just kind of be like, nope, I don't have to think. I just got to act. I got to follow orders, as simple as that. So, which is very dangerous. I mean, as we see, it kind of led him in some danger in this episode. But I mean, it's just kind of like, it seems like John just wants an escape. That's kind of what the him going back did for him. It's like it gave him an escape, gave him an opportunity. I mean, whether he's really taking this time to reflect, I don't know. I'd like to think he is kind of reflecting on everything, but part of me feels like he's just kind of numbing himself and just blocking out everything. Just do my job, follow orders. It keeps things simple. With Team Arrow, things were complicated. Like I said, you don't have to think. I mean, you do. I'm not trying to shortchange his situation, but I feel like for him, like, he doesn't feel like he needs to. He can just take orders and leave it at that. But like I said, it turned around on him because he ends up finding out his superiors are like, oh yeah, we came here to steal stuff. We came here to steal the materials, and we're basically going to sell them. And because even the guy brought it up, he's like, the fact of the matter is, there's people with magic. There are metahumans out there. It just like, the world could basically fall apart at any moment. And it's like, if I'm basically gonna die, I'm gonna die with regret for what happened. The fact is, I killed my own man. I set them up, but I'm gonna die a very dishonest, disgusting, rich man, essentially. And it seems like he's going to frame John for it, because it's like, oh yeah, even killed one of the soldiers with John's gun. So leaving John tie, like, because I was like, I'm very curious to see where that goes. I feel like what he will ultimately have to do is turn to Oliver. He'll kind of come back to Starling City. Whether it'll be next episode or I don't know. But I feel like in the future he will be returning to Starling City to kind of find a way to clear his name. Because I mean, the fact is that now the government's going to look at it as like, oh, he was a traitor. He killed his team because he was trying to get the materials for himself. So basically, there's probably going to be a lot of government agencies coming after him. And I'm very curious about Lila too. Like, I mean, like I said, it's pretty early known in the series, but I'm very trying to figure out like what their whole situation is, because we still haven't found out, like, because the last time we saw Lila was when Diggle told her like, oh yeah, I killed Andy, and she was just kind of okay with it. And I guess that kind of disturbed him more so than anything. But I guess maybe Lila became like that for a multitude of reasons. It's like, oh, he threatened our child. Plus, the fact of the matter is, she taking over Amanda's job at what's that group known as Argent? Taking over that job is just kind of, I guess you have to be very cold and calculating. I mean, that's kind of how Waller was able to keep her position for so long. So, I mean, that's how I'm chalking it up. So I'm curious to see, will she be able to help him out or not? Has her and John ever even talked at all, since then? And since I'm speaking about their kid, we still haven't seen the kind of ramifications from Flashpoint kind of affecting Arrow yet. Now, what I'm wondering is, will we ever really see that until like any heavier crossover? Because there's a certain thing that kind of came up. I came to realize because other people brought it up. It's like Flash and Arrow kind of have different production schedules, so sometimes certain story elements might not link up with the other shows just because it's like, oh yeah, this started earlier than this and whatnot. So I'm very curious to know, like, if that's the case, maybe we won't really see those kind of after effects until later parts of Arrow. Maybe at this point they're not that important, because that was the whole thing. Like, I'm thinking Flashpoint stuff was only going to affect Flash, because it's like because they're like, there's no way it's going to affect all the other shows because that would just be too much. But that's why I'm thinking they're only changing little minor things here. Nothing too like mind-blowing and too massive to change, because even in Barry's life, a lot changed in drastic ways, but it was never anything huge, at least that we know of so far. So like so far, the only thing we know about is different with the Arrowverse is Diggle having a son instead of a daughter. So I just kind of had to tack that on at the end. Like I said, really like the episode. I'm very interested to see where new Team Arrow, goes from here, finding out more about this Prometheus person. Oh, really quickly, I almost completely forgot about that. I'm going to tack this on at the end. Felicity, we learned a little bit more about her boyfriend, who she went to about, trying to get some information on a rag, trying to track down, Ragman. And an interesting conversation came up. She's basically being, obviously she's not going to tell him everything that she's doing, that she's working with Arrow, the Green Arrow, and stuff like that, obviously. Like I said, she's keeping secrets kind of all around, which, now that I'm sitting here, I'm thinking that it's kind of a little ironic, but I was about to say, like, well, kind of didn't, kind of got on Oliver about keeping secrets, but at the same time, it's like, no matter, she doesn't have to announce, she's a grown woman. She doesn't have to tell her ex that she's dating someone, it doesn't affect their team, that's her personal life. So that's why I'm kind of like, okay, never mind, Michael, back up. Don't be judgmental or something, which I wouldn't want to. It's just, I want Oliver and Felicity together. I don't care what anyone says. When I see a couple that I like, I stick with them, whether people think they're right for each other or not. It's like, let them kind of grow a little bit first and then come together. That's how I'm chalking it up. But the fact is, her boyfriend brought up the fact is, I've never actually met any of your friends. And then it kind of made me pause. Like, we don't actually know that much about Felicity's personal life. I mean, really, the only side of her life we know is her with Team Arrow. I'm wondering, is that the only side there is to her life? I mean, because we also got, like, the corporation side of her when she kind of took over what was originally Queen Consolidation and then turned into Palmer Tech. So, and like I said, I brought it up before. It's like, Legends of Tomorrow kind of shows that she eventually takes the company back. So maybe that'll be something we see this season. I don't know. But other than that, we don't really know much about her life, because it's like, oh, I've never met your friends. It's like, we've never actually met any of Felicity's friends too, because I don't, like, technically her only friends are work friends. So it's like Thea, Oliver, Curtis. It's like, that's all kind of her other job type of situation. Also, what do other people think she does? She got kicked out, like, of running Palmer Tech, so it's kind of like, what does she actually do for a job? I'm very curious. I wonder, is that just kind of, because that was kind of a running joke people had about the Flash being like, yeah, what does everyone at Star Labs actually do for a living? The fact is the power stays on and everything, so it does make you wonder what Felicity does. I mean, maybe that'll be something that comes up. I don't know. But the fact is, like, that's going to be interesting to see how that goes down, because it's like, I don't think she really has any friends outside of work friends. And it's going to be interesting introducing your boyfriend to your work friends. So, especially considering the fact is that the Green Arrow is working with, like, the new crime unit that Oliver's putting together and everything. So it's going to be interesting that he's going to be working with Felicity's new boyfriend. It's going to make things weird and awkward, especially as you continue working together and stuff. So I don't know. I just want to kind of tack that on before it just kind of clicked back in my brain that was something I want to talk about. Just kind of throw out there. So, but really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.